My name is Mavis McKinney-Farrand. I live in Brownstown. I remember very well the day I heard about John Kennedy being shot. I was working at a place called Mitchell Greeting Card Company in Detroit at Oakland and Grand River, and a young man came running in, and he was very distraught and upset, and we asked what was the matter with him, and he told us tearfully that the president had been shot. It was devastating for him and impacted everyone else in the store. We all ended up running out of the building. It was a beautiful, crisp day, and we had had the worst news we'd probably ever heard in this country.
Hi, I'm Margie Rutan, and I'd like to tell all you people that when I heard about the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, I was at the Sears department store and it was on the TV, shattered my life, broke my heart. I could not believe that this could happen in the United States of America, because I think he was a great man, and I think he would have done a lot good for our country. He wasn't given the chance. His life was taken from him at the age of 43. I do not believe this should have happened in our country.
My name is Virginia Shannon. I remember vividly. I was in the kitchen of my house baking, I believe, when I come on television and President Kennedy was shot. And I couldn't believe it. The sun was shining. It was just a beautiful day. And to have that tragic thing happen, it was unbelievable. I was awfully sad because I admired him so much.
Okay, I've been asked to recount my memories of where I was on the day JFK, John F. Fitzgerald Kennedy, was killed back in 1963. My recall is that I was in the 10th grade in high school, and I was, of all places, in my civics class when the news that afternoon was brought to us that John F. Kennedy had in fact been assassinated and in fact was dead. Of course, we were all kids, but we all knew the gravity of it. We were all afraid, we were all sad, and that essentially is my recall of that particular event, that particular day. But
my name is Amy Mullins. The day that I found out about President Kennedy's assassination, I was working at Port Huron General Hospital. My roommate and I were just at the end of our shift. We raced home as fast as we could to turn on the TV, and we sat there probably for the next 24 hours, glued to the set, not wanting to miss a moment of what was certainly a memory that history will never forget.
Hi, good morning. My name is Tony Abelard, and I was working for IBM in that year, and we went out to lunch at the Columbus Italian restaurant, very good, when we heard the news, and we just could not believe it. We could not believe it, and a lot of us, including myself, we started crying. We just couldn't help thinking about the wonderful person that he was, all the good things he wanted to do for our country, and the things he did for our country. We all love him and miss him, and he was a very charming, wonderful person. And I thank you so much for listening to my little story.
Every channel was glued on that. I mean, the assassination of the president, and I think everybody knew pretty early. I think it was at least 3 hours before they declared that he was murdered, assassinated, really. And I think they didn't want to declare it. You know, as you listen to things, because President Johnson took the oath of office in one of the military airplanes that was being flown from Washington back to Texas.
Okay.
And that's where I thought you'd have to take the oath of office from the Supreme Court justice, how they got them all on the airplane and everything.
Hi, I'm Eric Hartman, teacher at Lincoln Park High School. I often wonder how our country would be different if John F. Kennedy had not been assassinated. The 1960s was a tumultuous time with the civil rights movement and the Vietnam War, and I wonder, what would JFK have done differently? He was definitely a proponent of civil rights. However, Southern Democrats weren't always on board with him. But I wonder if he would have stood up and really pushed for those initiatives. In terms of Vietnam, he started sending advisors over to that country. But I wonder, would things have changed? I think they would have.
We're here with Jim Berry. We're just wondering what you were doing when you found out about President Kennedy's assassination.
Well, at that time I was working in a grocery store, and the news came through, and you just see all the sadness everybody in the grocery store felt when we felt our president was shot. And the other thing that was bad about it, he was shot before my wife's birthday, which is November 23rd. So it was actually a sad birthday for her when we found out that President Kennedy was shot. Well, everybody was sad, there's no doubt about it. Nobody could believe it, there's no doubt about it, when you get a president assassinated. We knew Lincoln was assassinated, but you would never think in days back then that something like that would happen to President Kennedy. He was a great president.
The question was asked, where was I when John Fitzgerald Kennedy was assassinated? I was just a young kid, 10 years old, and I was attending Dunn School in the city of River Rouge. It was one of the most devastating things I've ever heard, is that the President of the United States had been assassinated, because we had learned so much about the duties of the President in the history at the school I was going to. I'll never forget that day. I was devastated. We cried, and there was a lot of young kids crying in the tent and in that classroom. And to this day, I'll never forget where I was at on that date that John Fitzgerald Kennedy died.
When Kennedy was shot, I was in 6th grade at Mixter School in Lincoln Park, Michigan. We were out for recess when one of the kids came across and told us that the president was dead. We had heard before we went out that he had been shot, and so for the next half an hour, the teacher had us, she explained what was going on, and that the country would still be saved, blah, blah, blah. And everybody went home, and I remember it was a gray, kind of cool day in November, and all the neighbors were out chit-chatting about it outside. And for the next 3 days, basically everything stopped. I mean, nothing was open. Football games were canceled. Theaters were closed. It was just like 3 days of a memorial.
My name is Ron Hardy, and on November 22nd, 1963, I was just out of high school, and I was working at Coca-Cola Bottling in Wyandotte on Eureka and 5th. And a fellow on a high-low came by me and said, "Did you hear about President Kennedy got shot?" And he said, "In a motor cavalcade." Anyway, so that was where I heard it, and of course everybody just stops immediately. You don't know how to respond to that. So it was pretty heavy. And that's about it.
Were you emotional about it?
Oh, absolutely. Everybody, especially young people in those days, I was 18, and everybody was. They just stopped in their tracks.
I heard it, and then I was going to class, so I rushed over to class to see what the people were doing, because I assumed everybody was going to just be glued to the TV, because it was so shocking. Here he was in that parade, and it must have been about 10 o'clock their time.
Okay.
Dallas time, and a little after 11, that I heard about it. I went back and I said, well, where is there? I mean, there weren't a lot of TVs in those days.
Hi, my name is Tom Farinars. I work for the City of Wyandotte for the Wyandotte Museum as the maintenance man, and I live in Wyandotte, and I found out about the Kennedy assassination. Well, I was a freshman at Roosevelt High School. I was walking in between my classes, going to my next class when they announced it over the PA, and I just remember everyone barely stopping in their tracks and gasping, and then the girls starting to cry. And that's basically what I can remember of the assassination when I found out.
My name is Kay Sidebottom, and how I found out about Kennedy's assassination was I was in high school, and it was our last hour, and they came over the PA system from the principal's office and made an announcement, and then they left the radio turned on and had it through the PA system. So needless to say, we didn't do anything else for that class. And then my father usually picked me up from school, and he was late that day picking me up because he had a hard time getting away from the TV, as probably a lot of other people did. but that's my first recollection.
You could not change your voter address like they can. It's much easier today. Because I was a student in Ann Arbor, had an apartment, year round, although I didn't stay there year round. I'd come home in the summertime, but you have to, I remember I had worked on the Kennedy campaign in '61 when he ran.
Okay, so it had to be pretty.
That was the first year I was able to vote, and we celebrated because Kennedy. We carried one precinct in Ann Arbor, one Democratic for the president, and it was the first time since the first term of Roosevelt that an Ann Arbor precinct had ever voted for a Democratic president.
I was working for WKNR radio at the time, and I had just been returning from getting some advertising copy. I heard it on the Southfield Freeway and was in the company car. Got back to the station, and it was so eerie. And we had news reports on, and then I walked into the newsroom and I saw a teletype, and all it said was, "The president is dead." I should have saved that. It would have been a great collector's item.
You can start now.
Okay, I was in art class at Davidson Junior High School in Southgate, and Richard Marchand was the teacher. And it was announced over the PA system, and he immediately had us put our projects away. He was extremely somber. He had us put our projects away and then just sit at our desks, or tables really, with, being very silent. And school was let out 15 minutes early, and of course everyone was stunned.
What we've got here is the Saturday, November 23rd, 1963 edition of the Detroit Free Press. This entire 12-page section is the Free Press's extra edition, and it's all about the JFK assassination. Goes into details about anything and everything you can imagine that they would have 24 hours after the president was shot. They're talking about LBJ as the new president. And then one other thing I'll show you from this particular section is the death car, rigidly designed, and that of course is the car that the... Just a few more items. This is from the Detroit Free Press, November 23rd, 1963 edition, where they talk about John and Carolyn, John F. Kennedy and Jackie Kennedy's kids. This is the back page of that November 23rd edition. Some pretty famous photos, of course.